Hi, I'm Bunny Cakes and welcome back to my channel. So today I want to talk about good doctors and bad doctors and my experience with that. So I'll start with the bad doctor experience because I've had a much longer experience with the bad doctor I'm going to be talking about. Um, I started seeing this doctor probably about 7 years ago. And it was because my main doctor um, had moved on to another place. And so I had to switch over to seeing the new doctor that came in to replace him. And he had been there for a little while before. And my fiance had seen him for kidney stones and such. And I already super didn't really like this doctor. But at the time, I didn't have insurance, and the clinic I was going to was the only place that had what they call a sliding fee scale, and that's where they base what they charge you off of your income. And so I was able to see the doctor for like $20 a pop, which was a hardship even at times because I wasn't working or anything. And I had already told this doctor off because I went in with Mace because he had a really bad kidney stone. And the doctors always ask Mace things about like what happened in the hospital, and where he was always what we always jokingly refer to as doped up. When he's in the hospital, it's really, really bad, and his pain is extreme. And a lot of the time, they give him a drug called Stadol, and it basically knocks him out. And when he's awake, he won't remember what happened. And so I went in with him so that I could answer those questions for Mace because he had no idea what the answers were. And so the doctor kept giving me these like the side eye and like crappy looks when he would ask Mace a question. Mace would go, I don't know, and then I would answer the question. Um, and I told him off for that because it kind of pissed me off. And so that was my initial experience with this doctor. And then I had to see him as my doctor. And he somewhat redeemed himself by looking at, like, giving me a good once over upon initializing care for me. And he noticed that I had like signs of hypothyroid, which I had heard before when I was younger, but I wasn't able to get the testing. And he noticed I had signs for diabetes, so he like went ahead and rushed through and did the push through the testing for that. He didn't rush through the appointment, and he seemed like he was going to be an okay doctor. And then when I came back and he told me I had diabetes, which was like 5 days before Christmas that year, which was an awful time to find out you have diabetes. There's like 9 tons of candy and like 75 pies and all the carbs you can eat for the holidays up in my house. And the doctor's like, yeah, you can't eat any of that except for maybe some turkey. So I did not really do diabetes until after Christmas. Actually, I think it was after New Year's. Um, but when he told me I had diabetes, and he asked me if I had any questions, he kind of got a little weird with me when I said no, because when he told me he was going to test me for that, I immediately went home and um Googled everything I could about diabetes, and I went to the library and got all the books they had on diabetes and read everything, and there wasn't anything that he was going to tell me that I didn't already know, except for like the names of drugs that he was going to give me. And after that, the relationship with this doctor kind of went downhill, and it got especially bad because I get sinus infections really bad. When I was younger, I crushed my nose twice, and I had a lot of other head trauma, which I'll discuss someday on here. And so my sinuses are basically destroyed. And I'm sure that any doctor who looked inside my sinuses would be just flat out amazed, and I'd probably be in medical books and journals. Um, but it causes me to get a lot of sinus infections, and this doctor would, I would go in and have bloody snot and like a raw throat and black eyes, and my face would be swollen, and he would go, well, just keep taking your Flonase and your allergy pill, and there's not really anything I can do for you. So I would go home, and of course it wouldn't get better from that because I was doing that beforehand, and then it would get like way worse, and then finally I would go in with my head looking like somebody beat me to death, and bloody nose, and then finally he would give me antibiotics. And now remember, I don't have a job, so I can't keep going back, and on top of that, pay for the medicine I need. So it was really expensive for me. So I would wait until wait to go to him until I was absolutely about to die and miserable, and probably should have actually been going to the ER or something, so that I knew there was a greater chance of him giving me antibiotics to clear the mess out of my head. And then the final straw with that doctor was my back issues. When I started working at the deli, and I've said this before, I started having a lot of back pain because being up on my feet and doing a lot of the heavy lifting and manual labor notified me and exacerbated the problems that were already developing in my back. And so the biggest thing he did for me was that he gave me like a standing prescription of like ibuprofen. And I would get like 90 of those suckers a month, and I would run out of them probably um by week 2, maybe midway through week 3, because I was eating those things like Skittles. I was supposed to be taking one like every 6 to 8 hours, and I was taking 2 probably every 4 hours, especially on days where I was working. And now I can't take ibuprofen anymore. I can take it for like a day, and then I have the awfulest acid belly and heartburn that I've ever felt before, because I took so many of them. And he was constantly putting me in physical therapy. The physical therapy place that I go to when I go to physical therapy gives a shirt at the end, and I have 3 of those. I was basically in physical therapy for about a year and a half. And finally things got really, really bad, to the point that I went to work one day. I thought that my back pain was just my normal back pain. It was a little bit worse, but I could handle it. I went to work. I came back home. Um, I had to do some shopping after work to grab a few things. And I noticed that my right leg wasn't exactly responding the way it was supposed to. So it was dragging just ever so slightly. And I didn't think anything of it. I don't know why. I should have been worried, but I wasn't. And I went home and I ate and I went to sleep. And then I woke up the next morning and I couldn't feel my right leg, except for it felt like the hip and just a little bit below the hip. And I'm pointing at it like you can see it. And then down my leg where it felt like somebody had like a lit cigarette, or there was an electrical fire in my leg. And so I immediately called into work and said, I can't come in because I can't feel my leg. That's why. Because the manager at that store, you couldn't just say, I can't come in, family emergency. Like, he wanted all the flipping details. So I told him the gory details. I was like, I can't feel my leg except for the part that feels like it's on fire, so I'm going to the hospital. I'll be back to work when I'm back at work. And so I went to the hospital, and I went twice that day. They gave me Demerol and morphine, and if you've ever had either of those, you know they're powerful drugs. Neither one did anything. And I was in agony, especially once I got in the car, because sitting up put more pressure on the nerve that was pinched. And the second time that Pygmy drove me to the hospital, she actually called ahead and got permission to go to the ambulance bay and had them bring a wheelchair and out to wheel me into the place because, or to the ER because I couldn't walk. So they finally do a CAT scan and they tell me that my nerve is really badly pinched, and they gave me a prescription for um, Lortabs, and they were like the biggest Lortabs that you can get. And I took one of those, and again, it did nothing. But that's probably more about the fact that narcotics do nothing for me. And this seems like a tangent, but it's not. It's leading up to what happens next with the bad doctor. So they tell me to follow up with my bad doctor. And so I go, and I'm sitting in the waiting room at the clinic trying the best I can to get the pressure off. And it is literally the worst pain I have ever experienced. And then, like, the tears started rolling down my face. I couldn't not cry. It just forced itself out. And I wasn't sobbing, but tears were rolling. And the nurse comes out to call me back to the room. And I stood up. It took like 5 minutes. And then it probably took me another 5 minutes to walk probably 10 feet across the room to the door to walk back towards the doctor's room. And it was everything I could do to not be screaming. And the poor nurse, she's this tiny little woman, and she just looks at me and she goes, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And the only thing I could squeak out while trying to choke back the screams was, "Not even a little bit." And she asked me what was wrong, and I told her as best I could. I was like, "There's something busted in this region," and pointed to my hip. And so she takes me back and she weighs me, and she takes my blood pressure and my temperature and asks me what felt like a million questions. And I'm crying this whole time, and she's hurrying, but it felt like it took 5 days. And then finally I have to get back up and walk back to what is it's the farthest room away that they had. And she was apologizing the whole way. So I get in there, and I found that if I could lay down on that hip, I could pull the pressure off. And the physical therapist explained to me that it kind of opens the joint a little bit, and that's why it feels better. So I climb up on the table, and I almost fall off twice. And I'm laying there in the fetal position, just rocking and crying. And then the doctor comes in, and he asks me what's going on, and I tell him, while still crying so hard at this point that I was probably hard to understand. And he goes, and this is a thing he told me the whole time I had back pain. Um, he goes, "Well, a lot of this is because you're overweight." And I was like, "Okay, I'm no fatter today than I was yesterday, but okay." And he goes, "Well, what I'm going to recommend is that you go back to physical therapy." And I said, "Uh-huh." And he was like, "I think physical therapy is the only thing that I can do for you that's going to help." And I was like, "Okay." And then I said, because I worked in the deli and he knew this, I said, "Well, can you at least write me some time off work?" Now remember, fetal position, sobbing. I never sat up. I couldn't. And he had my CAT scans, and I later found out when I went to physical therapy that my nerve was pinched so badly that if they hadn't taken another 2.5 weeks to get me into physical therapy and I had started physical therapy, I probably would have lost all feeling and use of my leg. And so he says, "Well, I don't see why we really need to do that. I think you'll be fine." And I was like, I have to work literally tomorrow. And he was like, yeah, go to work. And he wouldn't even write me light duty, which he had done once before. And so I was like, all right. And I said a bunch of things that I can't say on here to him. And I walked out. Well, I limped out very slowly. And it was after that that um for the next 2.5 weeks I just stayed at home and I rested and I just tried to not do anything that required movement. And then after physical therapy started, I finally got an appointment with my new doctor, who is a very good doctor. And the thing about having the relationship with the bad doctor for so long is that it's makes me feel very weird about my relationship with my current doctor and even the urgent care doctors that I've seen, because I'm so used to having to state my case for any time I ask for antibiotics or um, anything else, that it feels like a setup when the urgent care doctor, he's really good for this. He will go, well, do you want a muscle relaxer? And I'll be like, yeah, if you think I need one, because it feels like a setup to me. Because I'm like, yeah, I'm going to say yes, and now the cops are going to beat down the door because clearly this is a setup and they think I'm some kind of druggie. And it's never that. And, so Dr. H is the doctor I see now. He immediately saw me and he took me off the steroids that I'd been on for like 6 months because it was terrible for my diabetes. And he put me on this drug called gabapentin, and it's like an anticonvulsant, but it really helps with nerve pain. And I remember he said, I can put you on this, but you have to take it 3 times a day. And a lot of people don't like that. And I'm still in a massive amount of pain at this point, even though it's 2.5 weeks later. Actually, it may have been longer. It might have been a month later. And the pain's not as bad, but sitting there, I was already sweating and paler than I am now, if you can imagine that color, and rocking back and forth. And I was like, I literally looked at this man and said, I'm ready to sacrifice chickens. I don't care if I have to take it 20 times a day or write that prescription. And he kind of laughed at me. And I started taking that, and he put me on naproxen instead of the ibuprofen because the ibuprofen was hurting my stomach. And I started to get better, and then the physical therapy started to help a little bit more as well. And Dr. H has just been so amazing, and I don't think if I was still seeing the bad doctor, Dr. M, that I would be on the road to having my weight loss surgery or anything like that, because I don't think that he would have approved it for me. Despite the fact that he was always constantly blaming my health problems on being fat, he was very big on, well, you need to exercise more and you need to eat less and things like that, instead of offering me other ways. And it actually wasn't Dr. H that suggested the weight loss surgery. It was Dr. B, the urgent care doctor. He suggested it, well, not just weight loss surgery, but using some method to lose weight. And this was after the third time that my nerve pinched. The last time it pinched, and I couldn't walk for 3 days. And I had told him how I was having so much trouble exercising at all, because any time that I did anything that was moderately exerting to me, my back would flare up, and then I would have to stop exercising for X amount of time until I healed. And so he put that idea in my head, and I really latched onto it, and I finally said, yes, I need to do something. And I also started seeing the chiropractor, a different Dr. M, and they have been really helpful as well. And I'll be going to see them soon, I'm not sure when I'm going to post this video because I'm pre-recording, but I will either have seen them or I will be going to see them when I post this. And because they mix physical therapy with the chiropractic, it helps so much more. And they listen to me as well as Dr. B and Dr. H do. And even Dr. Neese, my surgeon, um, he listens and takes my opinions into account. And I find it so weird after having what feels like an abusive relationship almost with my previous doctor. And so, and I think that if I were still seeing my previous doctor, I probably wouldn't even be able to walk now. And I wouldn't be like on my way to finding work again or anything like that. And so, my main message with this video is, and the reason I focus so much on the bad doctor, is that bad doctors and bad relationships with doctors are unhealthy. They're unhealthy for you, not just because they can be emotionally unhealthy, but because it can be physically unhealthy because, the doctor doesn't see beyond the fact that you're fat, or they don't see beyond one disability, or, they have issues with giving out like antibiotics. Like, there was no reason that I had to be practically dead in order to get antibiotics for an infection. And like, when I go to urgent care, which I go to most often for my sinus infections because I'll get them so quickly I can't get an appointment with my regular doctor. Those doctors, they are on it. They're like, here's um antibiotics, and do you want a steroid shot, or you need a steroid shot. When I go in for my back pain, they're like, we're going to give you a steroid shot to help with that. We're going to give you Toradol to help with the pain immediately. We're going to give you more steroids. We're going to give you muscle relaxers. And they're there to help me, and they listen to me. For instance, I was taken aback one of the first times I went to the urgent care when I didn't have to argue with the nurse that saw me that I had a fever, because my temperature was like 97.9, and my usual body temperature is generally about 95.7. I run very, very cold, and it's a symptom of my hypothyroid. And she didn't argue. She was just like, okay, well, if you feel like you have a fever, then you have a fever. And she checked back, in my previous records, and she went, oh, you run cold often, don't you? And I was like, yeah, normally I'm cold to the touch. I don't touch people because I'm so cold. It's a rule in my house that I have to warn people before I touch them most of the time, because my hands feel like the Grim Reaper has got a hold of you. Sometimes I don't even want to touch me with my hands. And like, I'm so cold that a lot of the time my cat won't let me touch her. I'm that cold through her fur. So yeah, and that was one of the things I was like, oh my God, this doctor, nurse, medical professional actually listened to me. And it's just amazing to me because I went so long with that awful doctor. Um, but now I'm starting to ramble, and like I said, my main point is, if you have a crappy doctor and you have the means to see any other doctor, then don't put yourself through that. Don't take the risk that they're going to overlook something that might kill you or severely injure you because of some arbitrary reason that doesn't apply or doesn't fully apply. And I'm not saying that my being overweight didn't add to my problem. What I'm saying is that the doctor wouldn't treat me beyond telling me that I needed to lose weight. He wouldn't give me any options beyond, well, you need to exercise and eat less. And that was awful, especially in a situation when he's telling me that while I'm sobbing, and I can't get up and go to the bathroom hardly, let alone try to work out. So that being said, I'm going to stop rambling about this, and please like and subscribe. The buttons are down below, and hit the notification bell. There's also a subscribe button here, and there's a link to my booktube channel here, doing all sorts of fun stuff over there. So if you like to read or you like books, check that out. And also over here are some videos from this channel that you might like if you haven't seen them. And remember to be strong, smile when you can, and always take care of yourself.